Mm. Let's be honest about it. You deserved it. Now, I have to pause and put a little caveat to what I'm about to say about the Jordan Neely subway situation, homicide, whatever. You got to be responsible if you know any kind of martial arts. Now, a lot of kind of martial arts doesn't mean you can kick anybody's ass, but it gives you an advantage against those who are inexperienced, especially if you ambush them. If you actually know how to box, your advantage in a street fight is tremendous. If you know jiu-jitsu and your opponent can't even wrestle, that's one thing. Now, if you're grabbing onto guys that are strong enough to fucking slam you on your head and kill you, that's another thing. Another thing is a lot of people don't understand what fights in public are like. If you're anywhere that's like concrete and shit like that, you can kill somebody with a single punch because it ain't your fist that kills them, it's their head hitting the floor when they're unconscious and limp. So, you could be going to jail for murder for doing the shit that this kid did to Jordan Neely. The other thing is, I know a thing or two about jiu-jitsu. If you properly apply what's called a rear naked choke, which is what was put on that black kid, if you properly apply that, they will go unconscious in about 8 to 10 seconds, maybe less. If you hold on to that for about 30 seconds to a minute, you might kill them. It's a lot different than strangling a person. If you just close somebody's windpipe, it takes minutes to kill them. You close off those arteries that go to the brain, it takes about a minute to kill them. Now, there are reports that say that he held the kid in the choke for 2 minutes. There's reports that say he held him in the choke for 4 minutes. There's reports that actually say that he held him in the choke for 10 minutes. It's my understanding that that guy was held in the choke for about a minute, and he was still alive after the choke was released, and he was put into what's called recovery position, laying on their side so there's no risk of them swallowing their tongue or just, as they're unconscious, just closing their epiglottal or whatever the fuck that thing is called and just not breathing. Now, we know that this homeless dude was probably on drugs and whacked out of his mind. And what have I told you about the drug situation in America lately? That there's fentanyl in everything. And what does fentanyl do to you? It can depress your nervous system and it can depress your respiratory system. And you can just die of not getting any oxygen without anybody touching you. Now, that happened to George Floyd. George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. He was not choked to death or murdered by Derek Chauvin, and that entire trial was a fucking sham and a lie and part of how the law doesn't exist in this country, and no amount of medical evidence can apparently sway a court or a district attorney or indeed a jury anymore. And there's no shortage of juries that will, if you're a white person committing a homicide against a black person, however justified it is, or whether or not they actually died as a result of you touching them. If you touch them and they die of a drug overdose and you're white and they're black, you may be going to jail. And if the reverse happens, there are juries out there that won't convict you simply because you're black. And it's not just black supremacists and juries. There are white people who are like, I feel like I'd be racist if I sentenced a black man to go to jail for the rest of his life. So even though I know he's guilty, jury nullification, I'll just fucking give whatever verdict I want, regardless of the law, regardless of instructions. But it comes down to, in my opinion, a self-defense situation. Jordan Neely was a threat to the other passengers. He had a felony warrant out for his arrest for socking a 80-year-old woman in the face, or 60-year-old woman. He socked a senior citizen woman in the face. He had a felony warrant out for his arrest, and he was out there threatening people again. You're on the subway. Cops can't reach you. You can call the cops. They're not going to get there anytime soon. Anytime soon. And in the meantime, this crazed homeless person who's on drugs can kill anybody, can hurt anybody. It is your responsibility as a citizen to subdue that guy. So he was asking for it. Now, how many homeless, crazy white people get fucked up or shot by cops or fucking knocked the fuck out and get their head smashed on the pavement? All happens all the time. How many black, crazy homeless people or drug addicts or whatever go out and get fucked up because they're fucking with people? Happens all the time. Why do we care about the Jordan Neely situation? Because he was a black dude, was decent looking, didn't look like a monster, wasn't a big guy. He got fucked up by a white dude. And because this country despises white people and wants to literally kill and destroy them and wipe out that race and wipe out the white majority of this country, to destroy the white culture of this country, this case has been singled out as hopefully another George Floyd situation. It's what's called astroturfing. They want to pump out this guy, and they want to hope at least one or two more similar situations happen on camera, so that, guess what is coming up next year? It's election season. And what have we had for every election season since the invention of BLM in 2012? With the fucking Trayvon Martin case. With the fucking Jordan Rice case. Tavon Rice? What was that guy's name? I don't remember. Tayshaun Rice? Anyway, the kid that got shot by cops, and I had talked previously on that case without knowing all the facts, because yes, he had like a squirt gun, and yes, the cops gunned him down. What's left out of that Rice case, or Tamir Rice, that's his name, was that he was threatening to kill people and pretending like that gun was real, and that's why the cops were called on him. And that he did not immediately put that gun down when the cops rolled up on his ass. So they thought it was real, and they put his ass down. And that is not necessarily the wrong thing to do. It might have been better to set up a perimeter and issue orders. And in that case, what are the cops guilty of? Is it first-degree murder? No. Is it second-degree murder? No. Is it capital murder at all? No. It's negligent homicide with a firearm. It's a different charge that carries probably what some people think are the wrong amount of years. But there are cops now going down for murder too, for accidentally or purposefully killing somebody in the situation where you could maybe say, hindsight 2020, fucking armchair quarterbacking that shit, say, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And there's some people who are all gung-ho on what they say. Derek Chauvin's guilty. That's absolutely not true. They say, was that guy Darren Brown, I think was the name of the cop, or the cop who shot Michael Brown, I forget his name. You know, they want to say, oh, you know, you did this, that, and the other thing, when no. Okay, but there's also cases like that chick who said taser, 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 and didn't pull her taser, pulled a gun, gut shot the guy, and killed him, and she went to jail, and some people say she shouldn't have. Well, that's another thing. Just so you guys know, I'm not pro-cop. All cops are bastards. And that chick, I don't think she should have been gone to jail for murder, but again, negligent homicide. The other thing is, women should never, ever be police officers. I know this is an extra topic, a little bit of an aside, so I'll try to be short with it. But if a woman is faced with a physically superior suspect, which will be 98% of all men that female cop encounters, if that male suspect resists arrest, the female cop has two alternatives. Like, a male cop could physically kick his ass, slam him, subdue him, hit him with a baton, tase him, whatever the fuck, chase him, whatever. The female has only two options. Only two. She can shoot that man to death, or she could call for competent backup. Call backup male police officers to come help her do her job. Now, there's a lot of psychological reasons why women are ill-suited to be police officers, but the primary reason why they should never be is the gender situation, the physical situation. That's the same why women should not be infantry, why women should not be firefighters. Now, I know, and because I've encountered, veterans who talk about women in the military, and former cops or family members of cops talk about female cops who are competent. I don't care. Because most cops only have one situation like this in their whole lives. And same goes for civilians, where you're faced with the situation of having to use lethal force on somebody. And in my opinion, chokeholds are lethal force, because I want to bring it back to you if you're still here. The point is, if you apply a rear naked choke on a suspect, they will die within about 60 seconds. And if you're underneath them and can't tell that they've gone limp for whatever reason, or, sometimes they'll still be moving around even when they're unconscious, if you hold on to that choke until they entirely stop moving, You may have killed them by the time you think, oh, they stopped moving, I can let go. They may already be dead. All right? You need to be careful doing that. If you know what you're doing with a chokehold like that, they will be incapacitated and therefore no longer a threat within about 10 seconds, 15 tops. Again, if you're doing it right. Now, if you're not properly compressing their arteries, they will continue to struggle and continue to fight. If the pressure of your arm is around their chin in any way and not on those carotid arteries, you're just hurting them, and you may end up applying it wrong. You may be in a strangulation situation, which again, it takes minutes to kill. And it's my understanding that, again, this guy did not apply that chokehold for more than a minute. All the reports that say he did are lying. And whenever you're facing one of these racial situations, you're going to encounter a fuckload of liars and false reporting and deceptive editing of the video. Because again, like whenever anybody shows a video of this incident, they don't show that when he released him, he put the guy in the recovery position. In fact, I've seen that in street fights too, when guys are actually proper boxers and they're properly trained and shit. Once they knock a guy out, they immediately try to turn him on his side so he doesn't asphyxiate and shit like that. Like they're actually responsible about kicking the fucking shit out of people. And in my opinion, you should be trying to avoid conflicts like these whenever you can. However, when you're on a subway, you're in an enclosed space where you cannot avoid the confrontation. And you are in immediate danger, and there's not a fucking chance a cop can show up. And in the case of New York City, where everybody's jerking off talking about social workers can't physically subdue violent suspects. They can't do shit. They can try to talk a guy down. They won't do it any better than a cop who's there really, really trying not to use any force on somebody and trying really, really hard to talk him down. But if weapons come out, if violence comes out, there's no more talking. There's no social working. You can suck my fucking dick. That doesn't do shit. It doesn't do jack fucking shit. Get the fuck out of here. And it's also not a situation where it's like a video game and you can use the non-lethal option. You can use like a tranquilizer dart, or you can fucking VATS target the dude and put 2 in his leg instead of shooting him in fucking center. That's not the way things work. Once the gun comes out, it's a lethal confrontation. And like I said, the caveat thing is once a chokehold is being used instead of like an arm bar or just a wrestling move with a hammer lock to pin the guy on his belly, any of this shit. Once you're going for somebody's neck, lethal force. Once the gun comes out, lethal force. There's none of this cowboy bullshit, shoot the fucking knife out of his hands like it's a Clint Eastwood movie. That doesn't happen. If you're going to be in a confrontation like that, or if you see a confrontation like that, know that either it's your responsibility as a community to gang up on a guy like this, like you need to coordinate with people and multiple people can subdue a guy without killing him or without seriously injuring him, if you're lucky. But if it's one-on-one, you may have to resort to using these techniques or using weapons that result in a fatality. And you need to be very careful because the law is really retarded about situations like these. They're retarded about what you did immediately before the lethal situation happens and immediately after the lethal situation happens. Anything you say, any way they moved, any way you moved. All this happens in a split second in real life, but hindsight, everybody's doing frame by frame, trying to convict you of murder. They'll want to talk for ages. Like you saw in the Rittenhouse trial, they'll want to talk to you for ages about frame 293 of a fucking video with thousands of frames. And they want to try to say that split fucking microsecond in time, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. So keep that shit in mind. I didn't mean to talk for 15 minutes about this subject, but it became also sort of about the nature of self-defense and also the nature of, I might have to add one more thing. Lots of politicians like to talk about mental health and this, that, and the other thing, but the thing is, they shut down all the asylums. They shut down all the sanitariums. They shut down all the quote-unquote mental health hospitals or whatever. There's nowhere for these psychos to go. And guess what? Now that the Democrats, especially in New York City, have introduced bail reform, where no cash bail, you can sock a fucking old lady in the face and do a felony assault, and you can be sent out on bail, and you're out there a fucking danger to anybody, and it didn't cost you a dime to get out of jail. And you know what? Some of these people should have never been ended up in jail. A fucking clinical psychologist should have taken one look at this guy and shoved him in a fucking sanitarium. It shouldn't really be up to the justice system to fucking treat these people. It should be up to the medical system. But they have been cut off There's nothing you can do for a psycho except for either cope with them or put them down. You can't even imprison them in jail anymore, and there's so many people in prisons. Part of the reason why prison is such a horrible place to be is because there's so many fucking psychos in there that should be somewhere else with rubber rooms and straitjackets, but they're not. Because this country is fucked up. And it's fucked up on purpose. And there are any place where there's a blue motherfucker, where there's a Democrat in charge, whether it's the mayor or the governor, you're in a fucking dangerous state. And you're in a dangerous state where there's psychos, there's criminals, there are rapists, there are abusers, there's larcenists and murderers and fucking assaulters and fucking gangbangers and all that shit. And they're out there, and the justice system's not interested in doing shit. The medical system's not interested in doing shit. You're on your own. And if you do something about it on your own, they'll try to make a statistic out of you. They'll try to kill you. They'll try to end your life, either with life in prison or fucking send you the fucking chair or something, over shit like this. And it's their fault. The blood is on the hands of the Democrats and the dudes, the specific ethnic minority that is interested in ruining cities like this and degrading this country into a lawless hellhole. The actual people in charge, the actual people like the Attorney General of this country, who's a dude, and George Soros funding the DA elections, the mayoral elections of the scum that ends up in all these major blue cities, from fucking Missouri to New England to California to Utah and all that shit, okay? Or not Utah, fucking like Ohio and Colorado and all that shit. You're on your own. This country is being stripped of the law and order that makes it function. It's being stripped of the culture that makes it strong. It's being fucking stripped of the people who make it righteous. Keep that in mind.